Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy. We have a special episode today for obvious reasons. We are live, which should be interesting if it's working. It doesn't always work for me, but we'll see if it does work. But the big news today is that Bradley Carnell is our new head coach in MLS, and here to talk about it, I'm going to go start at my left bottom here on my screen, which is actually a Fulham logo. Stuart, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Sitting on my couch, and I get to look at you guys, but my camera's not working, so you don't get to look at me. So it's the best of both worlds.
For you, maybe. Right next to him, in the window next to him, is Santiago Beltran. You're here. We're talking. And by here, I mean you're in Puerto Rico, right?
Yeah, I'm in Puerto Rico. Finally found the location of the podcast. Somebody was joking out there. I think it was Steve. He was like, "Oh, make sure to give Santiago the location of the podcast." So finally found it. I'm glad to be here with you guys.
No one knew that we were hiding it in Puerto Rico this whole time. Right above him, Matt Baker. Matt, you've been a busy man today.
Super exciting day. Glad to be talking about it with you guys. It's one of those monumental days that's just fun to talk about, fun to focus on, fun to write about, fun to be a part of. You don't get this opportunity to have your first head coach join the MLS club and your pro team very often. It's kind of a once-in-a-lifetime thing, along with all the other things that have happened so far. Exciting time.
It is, yeah, kind of like something you can tell your kids. I was there for the first head coach's announcement. That's an amazing thing that we were lucky enough to be around for. Lots of firsts for this club, of course, in St. Louis and St. Louis soccer. Matt, why don't you get us started, man, because you did the live tweet for us today for the event that we were able to attend, and you also wrote an awesome article to kind of inform people on what happened.
Yeah, my fingers hurt. My brain wasn't ready. I didn't have enough coffee to be able to multitask between all those different things. But no, it was super exciting to actually be attending that the press conference. So the whole thing was kind of really well put together from last night's teaser, which kind of got everybody buzzing on Twitter and on Facebook and speculation and doing shoe comparisons and seeing who was wearing the shoes and can you find I swear on first glance, Mario from the Shoot Boys corrected me, but I swear the shoes look the same between what he wore on the field and that little teaser coming off the plane. But that was a fun thing to kick off the whole festivities with. And then this morning, press conference at 9:30 Central Time. Naturally, the Athletic had the scoop. So about 30 minutes before or so, Sam Stejskal from the Athletic let it rip that his sources confirmed that Bradley Carnell would be the new head coach for St. Louis City. He had a little article up right before the press conference, but I thought the press conference was really well done. Again, very honored to be that our group basically got an invite on that. And so it was awesome to be among the media there, Post-Dispatch and national writers and everything like that. It was just an honor to be a part of that. And so it all started off where the VP of Public Relations, Courtney Mueller, was introducing everyone. Carolyn Kendall-Betts came on to just talk about how momentous of an occasion this was. She introduced Lutz. Lutz wasted no time in just getting his friend and longtime colleague, and he knew him as a player, knew him as a coach, Bradley Carnell, onto the stage to give a few prepared remarks. A lot of it was happy to be here, excited for this opportunity. It's some of the same things we heard when Lutz first came on about it being the most unique opportunity that all of soccer had to offer with this, building it from the ground up, and Bradley Carnell being able to get in a full year plus before he'll actually take the field as a head coach and kind of oversee how the City 2 team comes up and all of that. And then once he did his prepared remarks, they went into a Q&A session. So we got to see a little bit about what the media had to ask. We got a couple questions in that we were able to ask. And all the while, I got to live tweet this. And so trying to get all that out there. So if anybody's listening and they want a blow-by-blow of what it was like in that, our Twitter has a pretty decent minute-by-minute of everything that's going on. But I think a lot of people at this point have Googled Bradley Carnell. They're aware of who he is and where he came from. South African native. He was a defender. He played for a lot of South African clubs. He played for Stuttgart. So he started South Africa, went to Germany, came back to South Africa to begin his coaching career. He's known Lutz for a long time. He's known Lutz since at least 2015 when they were doing the Global United FC charitable match together. Lutz even mentioned today that he was an instructor when Bradley Carnell was first getting his coaching licenses. After his playing career, Bradley Carnell started coaching in South Africa for Free State Stars, which was kind of a collegiate level, I believe. An assistant with, the Free State Stars were the Premier Soccer League club. So he was in South Africa's top tier as an assistant, moved over to America in 2017. So he's been with the Red Bulls organization since 2017 in MLS. 5 years with them as an assistant, including a stint in 2020 as the interim head coach after Chris Armas was unceremoniously let go. So he led them, including a winning record, to the playoffs in his interim status, and he was kept on. So he actually was with Red Bulls for 3 different head coaches. So that tells me something right there, that he survived all 3 regimes in the Red Bulls organization before, and continuously the past couple of years since his interim spot. I think there have been some rumors here and there as one of the top assistants in MLS to get that next jump, and now here we are.
Here we are. Thanks for that breakdown, Matt. That's awesome. Santiago, since we haven't talked to you in so long, let's start with you, man. How did you feel about the day and all the information as it was coming to you?
Definitely an exciting day for St. Louis and St. Louis City SC. I don't know. Last night when the teaser came out and Detective Matt Baker figured out the connection with the shoes, I was like, oh wow, this is really happening. It has been rumored for a few weeks. It looks like this is our guy, and yeah, it was finally confirmed this morning. So very exciting. I have been thinking for a long time if it would be better to have somebody without MLS coaching experience, or somebody from overseas with experience and accomplishments. But just thinking about it, I think the team is, as they have done with everything, they have thought about things very well, and I think this fits that model. Obviously, he knows the system that the team wants to implement. Has played in the system, has coached using that system, is familiar with MLS, is familiar with academies, academy structure, and all of that. So I think it's a great hire, and he has 14 months to get ready, and will be able to get up and running with the academy and with the MLS Next Pro team, and be able to get ready for 2023. Hopefully, we'll see some of those players in those teams make it to the team debuting in 2023.
Absolutely. Stewart, I want to hear about what you thought about the day first, but feel free to kind of jump right into some of the stuff you wanted to talk about, maybe one of his answers to the questions or something like that.
I mean, I'm pretty excited. I think everyone else has said a lot of what I want to say, as far as, Lutz said on the I think it was the Sports Illustrated article today, about how he wanted a coach who is very familiar with MLS. And Matt, was that one of the questions in the announcement, or was that just a separate interview question? Do you remember?
So the Sports Illustrated one was a separate interview they did beforehand. Okay. Strauss did, but it was also asked in the press conference.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, and I thought that was pretty telling. I really liked what Lutz said, kind of about St. Louis and how Bradley kind of brings things to the table, and he's not a flashy hire, but those of us who were around for the St. Louis FC days, we experienced kind of the flashy hire at one point, and that kind of taught me to cool off a little bit. I mean, my favorite coach at St. Louis FC was Tritz, and Tritz isn't a flashy guy, so also a defender, so I'm hoping Bradley kind of brings the same kind of energy, and I'll temper expectations, but I everything I've seen from Red Bull supporters, uh, other executives in the league, he's really highly spoken of. So I'm excited to see what Carnell brings to the table.
Let me say one thing on that, and then we'll move on quickly because I don't want to focus on this. But it is interesting that 2 years and 1 day to the day since Trittschuh was announced as St. Louis FC head coach.
Love that. That's cool. Tritz has a special place in all of our hearts, I think. I don't know if anyone could ever come in and endear themselves to a fan base as quickly as he did in St. Louis. It was just like immediate, right? It was cool.
Definitely immediate, yeah.
Yeah, so one thing I wanted to mention, like what Stu was saying, or both of you guys have kind of mentioned this, how he isn't a flashy hire, and Santiago, you were saying there's not a ton of international experience or anything like that as far as coaching. And I wanted to make sure, first of all, they answered a lot of my question. I couldn't believe I got to ask so many questions and that it wasn't annoying. They used them. And one at the end, I didn't know how to ask it, so it took me a while to figure it out. But I said, I phrased it badly, but basically fans are saying, this is an assistant coach. He's never been a head coach. How are you going to hire someone like that? And they were clearly ready for it, and they gave the perfect answer. But Lutz really jumped on that and was like, we did this on purpose. This is how our team's going to be. We are going to be a team that doesn't care where you come from. We think the system and the will of the players is going to be able to top everybody. And someone who's going to come to work with something to prove and work hard, that's what we're about. And so that's what he was putting on Bradley as well. All those features, all those possibilities for him. So I thought that was well said. I mean, it's kind of the obvious thing to say, but he really said it with a lot of heart, and he was definitely expecting that question. So,
yeah, I wonder if part of that is also if you have a MLS coach out there, a guy who is on MLS roster or coaching radars. How many of those guys are necessarily going to, take 14 months off of coaching matches, MLS matches, to kind of take something that's being built from the ground up and more of a project than something that's kind of, final product.
It's also interesting to think about what just happened at RB Leipzig in a way. I think I was trying to think of a coach that had their own ideas, that had a strong will, that was successful in a team that's like a pressing system, rather than a coach that would come in and kind of make the system and teach the system and not try to take over their ideas. Like Chris Armas was praised shortly for implementing more possession for Red Bull New York, and then it just was a disaster, right? Julian Nagelsmann's the first guy to come in and make RB Leipzig actually play with some kind of possession and be successful, and I think he's a super special coach. But I think a lot of times it doesn't work. You need a guy that's going to be humble and come in and teach the system and not try to get too fancy on us. I don't know if that's something you guys have thought, but it's something I've been ruminating on lately.
Well, and I think the opportunity here is kind of what they were saying, that 2022 provides a trial run, so to speak. Yeah. So regardless of what the level of competition is, you're going up against these other MLS 2 teams, and you get to try out on a bigger level than the academy level these tactics. You get to see how your press and counter press are going to work on this. You get to, you can really throw some things out there and see what sticks to an extent. I'm not saying they're going to just be anti-competitive and just do whatever they want and see what works for 23, but there has, and they even mentioned it, trying new things and seeing what works this year, be a little innovative in certain ways in MLS Next Pro. So I'm interested to see how that season develops. And it's not going to be, side note, it's not going to be Bradley Carnell that coaches this MLS 2 team at any point. They were clear about that. But from an organizational level, we know with Lutz, with Hackworth, with Bradley Carnell mentioned it, that they're all going to be systematically similar from top down. And so what the academy has been doing with the press and the counter press, we are seeing that there's talk of two teams doing the same thing. I see it almost and they've said that they're going to try these things. I want to see how well that works and if they start to adapt certain things as this year goes on, because that'll give us an eye towards, are they going to stick with this press, counter press, the high intensity, exciting soccer that they've been talking about for the past year.
Even CKB in her speech, in the intro speech, mentioned the high pressing system, and I thought that was hilarious.
She got into it.
Yeah, I liked that. I mean, it's just like, it's already that instilled, I think, that, you know, literally every person who spoke on the day mentioned that, so I thought that was cool. Santiago, any other... Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, even though he's not going to be coaching the MLS Next Pro team, he's going to be involved. And as Matt said, they'll be able to try some things and see how this press and counter press works with the players they bring. And they'll be able to basically test the system with these players. And hopefully some of these players can move to the team playing in 2023. But yeah, I think he's gonna have time, and that's the other thing. When I was thinking about, okay, should we have an experienced coach, a coach that has had success? If the team brings someone like that, there will be more pressure to get results immediately. But I think with Carnell's hire, he's gonna be able to get time and basically implement the system, and it will be more of a process. And even though Lutz said that he wants the team to be successful starting in 2023, I think that's going to take time. I could be wrong, and maybe the team will be successful right away, but I think that's going to take time, and having somebody that is going to have that time to implement the system and the ideas, and with not that much pressure for the results as an established coach will have, is key also for this project.
And if I'm a player, I'm super excited that I get to be a part of all of this building. You now have a head coach in place over a year out who's going to be watching you this entire year, whether you're in the academy or whether you're in the MLS Next Pro, and he's watching for those homegrown players to sign. There's no other club you can look at that's had this kind of eye or ability for the academy and the two team players to be signed just based on what their talent is, as opposed to who can we fit into our roster. Because the roster it's a blank slate, like he said. It's a blank slate to work off of, and you have all these kids who now are fighting for spots where it's yours for the taking. There's nobody in your way right now.
Yeah, and there were open tryouts for the reserve team. I thought that was pretty cool. You know, who knows who's going to show up and play on that team. I'm really, really excited for that roster. I'm going to really enjoy breaking that one down. Another thing Carnell said too was, he did say at making the playoffs bare minimum was something that was always a goal for him in MLS. So yeah, I do think he's going to have freedom, but you know, in MLS that's a pretty low bar, but for a first year team to make the playoffs, that's pretty difficult. So we'll see if he does try to push for that. Stuart, I saw a screenshot you made earlier in a tweet of something you really liked that Carnell said, I think. And I don't know if that's what you want to talk about, but I know a lot was said today, and you seem to be picking up on a lot of things that you liked. So I was curious if you could think of one of those right now.
I think you're talking about the Lutz screenshot I took.
You're right, it is Lutz, pardon me.
Yeah, it's he was just talking about not believing in signing marketing names to make us better, believing in structure, a way of playing, and a philosophy, having a long-lasting story, and Lutz wants a club where there's long-term plan in place. So it's also kind of interesting, you know, Lutz isn't known for being a long-term guy, but it's very clear that he's intending to maybe set up a long-term foundation for when he leaves. Just think all of his terminology he uses is obviously very, very forward planning. And, you know, that was one thing about Bradley someone mentioned, maybe in Tom Timmerman's article, about how Bradley Carnell typically sets down roots for a longer period of time. I think 4 to 5 years is kind of the minimum he's been everywhere. So uh, yeah, just it's cool that that foundation that, and also thinking that maybe Lutz is gone in 2024 or something like that, but the pieces he puts in place will be carrying on for probably the rest of the decade.
Yeah, Bradley was. He did mention short to midterm future, I think is what he said at some point
He
during
said that exact phrase.
which weirded me out a little bit. I was like, boy, come on, man. Like, either. Now, wait a minute. I don't know if that means, like, he's not sure he's going to last very long or if it means he's on to better things.
Or is his short term 4 to 5 years?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, I like that, actually. I especially like that. But part of what came up, too, was that, Matt, I'd like you to talk about this because I know it was in your article. I know you heard plenty of it. Was asking him what he thought of St. Louis and why, we got to ask, like, why he turned down Man U basically over this. And, yeah, Matt, you put that in your article.
Yeah, a lot of it went down to what was really interesting that he said that he was a man of his word. And so that kind of caught me off guard almost, because if you look at the timeline of the rumors of us talking to him, they go back to like August or so of last year. And then the Man U rumors, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, started coming out around December, early December, maybe even around Thanksgiving. But he apparently had already agreed to join St. Louis City prior to those rumors surfacing or discussions taking place. And so in addition to falling in love with the concept of building this kind of system from the ground up and having a blank slate to work off of, in addition to Lutz and that being a known factor, and the ownership's just overwhelming support and the facilities, it echoed a lot of the things that Lutz said, but the timing of it was super interesting to me, that he actually appears to have already been in agreement to join us for a month and a half at least at this point, since right after I think they mentioned in one of the interviews, right after Red Bull's season ended on November 20th, after they lost to the Union in the playoffs. So knowing that started discussions in August, he was inked probably end of November and held to his guns, him and his family, who they appear to enjoy the area from everything they've seen so far. So it's a lot of the familiar notes of, they like the area, it's family friendly, they love what ownership is doing with the facilities and the ability to just create your own stamp on something. So everything that Lutz had said, he carried through in spades almost. And it does go to, if you remember that interview we talked on last time about Red Bull, and he didn't mention Red Bulls in the interview, but he mentioned Major League Soccer opportunities, wanting to stay in the United States. This makes all sense in the world when you're putting the puzzle pieces together.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think about that quote all the time. And another thing he said, too, was like, you could tell that family was like a major part of his decision.
Big time.
I imagine like it had to be, it would be stupid not to say to your wife and even your kids and be like, listen, it's Man U. Like, should we think about this? Like, do you guys want to move to Manchester? But like it was pretty clear. Like he said, my Americanized family, which I thought was just absolutely hilarious. That they clearly are very comfortable being Americans, and he said like he is identifying as American or so, I forget the phrase he used, but he's loving it here as well, and that seemed very genuine. So I enjoyed that as well. Any other thoughts? I have one more I want to bring up at least, but does anyone else have some more thoughts they want to bring up?
Yeah, so I think, even though it was Man U, I think being the head coach versus being an assistant coach, I think also had a big part on that decision. But yeah, I was surprised at what Matt was saying. After putting all the puzzle pieces together, it looks like this has been agreed for a while, and I'm surprised that it was kept in secret for so long. And even the leak this morning was just half an hour before, and we were expecting something to come out last night.
It's almost like they leaked it just so everybody else would have to say as first reported by The Athletic. And that's the only reason they did it. I saw a Fox 2 article in St. Louis. I saw that where they credited The Athletic for first reporting it. And this almost makes me think like, all right, we're not going to take too much of your thunder, but we are going to be the first, so people have to say it first.
Yeah. We were talking offline how I truly think that leaking, and I've said it before on the show, like I think leaking actually, it helps like the buzz. So, I think I said if I was city comms department or PR department, I'd be leaking it, especially to The Athletic where all the nerdiest soccer fans are there anyway. It's perfect. But, oh shoot, there was one more thing I wanted to say about that. I thought it was also hilarious that I felt like we teed him up to be like, why'd you choose St. Louis over Man U? For him to be like, how could I turn down this amazing opportunity? And he did not say that at all. And I thought that was pretty funny as well.
He kept it very level-headed.
Yeah, and actually, I would say he's pretty level-headed in general.
Yeah.
Nothing too crazy there, which, I mean, great, no problem. That probably comes in handy in this business. One thing I wanted to talk about was him, we asked how they first met, Lutz and him. And he said that they knew of each other and stuff, but the first time they really got close was when they were doing the coaching license class, right, Matt? And Lutz was teaching it, and he just thought that Bradley was like something special, and Lutz has a lot of guys going in and out of these classes, I'm sure, that he's teaching over and over. But it's super cool. Like, I think my favorite thing about Lutz, I don't know if this is my favorite, it's up there in the top 5, is I've seen a lot of good leaders, especially in large organizations like a sports team, a professional top-level sports team in the United States. It's not necessarily that the guy in charge is like tactically smart and perfect and is going to make all the right player moves. A lot of times it's just like bringing in all the right guys. And it just, having met all the people that are working with us in the comms department and PR department, sure, that's awesome too. I don't know how much he's a part of that, but it just feels like all the technical people that have been brought in are also really good. And I think that could end up being one of Lutz's strongest, successful traits, is that he's just bringing in all the right people. And we'll be able to tell. I mean, we're not saying that Bradley's going to be successful right off the go. This could be a terrible move. But I just took note that he noticed in this class, however long ago, that Bradley was something special, and it's coming to fruition here, at least getting into being put into play here to see if it will work out. So, yeah, go ahead.
And good leaders grow leaders. And so I think that's one of the things that I kind of got the sense that Lutz is looking forward to continuing to grow Bradley as a head coach. One of the things mentioned as far as only having interim head coach notwithstanding, only being an assistant in MLS up until now doesn't matter because he's hungry, he's smart, he's intelligent, and he's driven. He's not going to rely on his laurels. He's not going to get a paycheck. He wants to continue to move. And he has his eye towards Europe. Ultimately, I think there's probably an inkling in the back of his head, knowing that Manchester United came calling. He could have that opportunity to call again. We talk about players moving over all the time. I think whether it's a top 5 league or just any other opportunity to just continue to grow, even grow in St. Louis, win titles, develop players, send them to Europe, all those things that he has an opportunity to do. And Lutz, as that kind of top level technical leader, is the one. He believes he's the one to get the most out of Bradley and continue to have him grow, as opposed to bringing in an established person. I really enjoyed hearing the comments about why it's important to Lutz that Bradley's not a finished product, and he's not an established coach, been around for a while, and you can bring him in and hit the ground running in that aspect. So I think that speaks volumes to where he sees Bradley's potential in the next few years.
Another one was Lutz said they had hundreds of candidates that they were looking for, and that Bradley was the first choice. And like, knowing everything we just said about Bradley, for him to be the first choice out of hundreds of candidates around the world, pretty crazy. Stuart, we haven't heard from you in a while. Any thoughts or new topics you want to bring up?
Just I didn't miss out on the press conference, so I'm kind of catching up. But when you guys were talking, I was just thinking about what some of the "This Is Silly" guys have been talking about for ages. Is marketing is great and all, but what really matters is how the team handles things on the field. And all of the hires that Lutz has made seem really sensible and just solid hires that I can't complain about. And as much as I absolutely love all the staff who aren't doing the technical football operation side of things, but proof is in the pudding, and this hire and all the talking about it, just you guys are getting me excited. I'm not feeling super cynical right now, so I don't know what you did to me.
What a day.
Yeah, Matt, what were you trying to get Stuart to say? Something? Oh, like to be really cynical about the hire.
I told him. Yeah, go ahead.
I do have. I was talking to David Semmelmeyer on Twitter today, and he's a guy some of you guys are familiar with. He brought up something that was interesting because Sporting KC has kind of switched over to more of a pressing system, but they're very reluctant to kind of rotate their squad. So they start off great, and then they just kind of had a lot of squad burnout, especially this year. But Bradley, coming from New York, and the Red Bulls do also, the pressing system, but with the deep academy, and they rotate through. So it'll be really interesting to see. I assume Bradley's going to kind of follow that same approach and kind of have a much heavier squad rotation, and kind of draw from the academy pretty heavily. So even though he's not directly coaching the academy, it'll be fun to see how he incorporates it.
Yeah. I asked that question. Go ahead.
Far be it for me to second guess Peter Vermes with Sporting Kansas City, but if you're going to run a pressing, high octane offense or even a counter pressing defense, you might want to use the available subs that you have regularly.
Wilson Harris was right there.
I know. He didn't get enough chances, in my opinion, and it's interesting because I had a chance to go to a few post-game conferences for Sporting KC, and 50% of the time there was a question about the substitutions because he only used one or two. There were games where he didn't use any, and I think towards the end he was like, I'm not going to answer any questions about substitutions. The answer was always the same. He was like, well, the guys that I had were playing well. I didn't want to make any changes. I didn't think they were needed, but yeah, towards the end he was like, I'm not going to ask. If that's where you're going, I'm not gonna answer any questions about substitutions. So next question, but hopefully here we will implement those substitutions, and yeah, it's a system that is very physical, requires the players to be in great shape, and yeah, you need to rotate and take advantage of those substitutions for sure.
Part of it is style. So I think Peter Vermes has that kind of a style where he has those opinion of his players. The other half of it is proper squad building, roster building. And so everything we've talked about with Bradley's experience with an MLS club or Hackworth's experience building a new MLS club, being able to build a roster where you have the available subs that you feel comfortable sending in the 50th, 60th minute if you need to consistently. And this, going back to this year being kind of a trial run or being able to eyeball a ton of homegrowns that a team normally wouldn't be able to potentially use. I mean, that's an opportunity that I hope to see. And I hope to see us having that depth that allows us to continuously do that, because we're going to need it, to your point, Santi, that we can't just go with one or two subs if we're going to run the offense in 23 that Lutz and Bradley are talking about running.
Yeah. I love that you guys are talking about this, and I haven't said a word, because that was my favorite thing about New York Red Bulls and New York Red Bulls 2. And I asked that question. I was like, do you see the reserve team being used as similar to in New York? And I was looking for a super technical answer, and I was asking for too much for a press conference like that. But that's what I wanted to hear. I wanted to hear, yes, we're going to have a very deep rotated squad is what I was looking for. So We're all on the same thought level process here, and I think that's a little too cute. A little too cute, guys. Any other thoughts? We've got an MLS draft we can talk about, but I don't know if we want to talk about Bradley more.
So I've got a couple stats that I wrote down because the thing I was teasing Stu about was come in with the negative, and I've only seen like 2, maybe 3 negative comments, and it was from the Facebook crowd where it's like, he was just an assistant. We're only bringing in an assistant. He wasn't an actual head coach anywhere. What are we doing? We're going to fail right off the start. One guy's like 5 losing seasons in a row coming up. The other one was, we only hired him because they're friends. They go way back. It was a buddy hire. But I was looking up stats on head coaches in MLS. So we know that it's a parity league. We know that there are not dynasties in this league. So a couple different things that I saw. MLS has been around for 25 years. There have been 17 different MLS Cup winning head coaches. So in 25 years, 17 different MLS Cup winning head coaches. If you take Bruce Arena and the first 5 years of the league out of that equation, you come down to 16 different head coaches winning MLS Cup in 20 years. And nobody has more than 2 besides Bruce Arena.
That's crazy.
So there's parity in the league, and I think the next stat that I have speaks to why MLS experience is important. Dating back to 2006, so 15 years, every MLS Cup title winner has had at least 2 years of experience as a head coach in MLS prior to their club winning the title. So you haven't had those non-MLS experienced head coaches brought in and immediately have success, ever, in the past 15 years. Of those who have won the title with at least 2 years of experience, you're looking at people like Jason Kreese, Gary Smith, Caleb Porter, Greg Vanney, and Tata Martino. So they were all still with their first MLS club as the head coach. Those were the only ones still. Everybody else had moved on to a second MLS club.
And Tata's kind of somewhat special as well.
Agreed. So it's an interesting mix of, this is why MLS experience is important. And granted, there is the assistant title where an interim coach for half a year, but you don't win an MLS Cup. It's pretty safe to say you don't win an MLS Cup without MLS coaching experience of some kind. You don't come into this league and expect to win immediately unless you have that.
And look what I think FC Cincinnati is like a perfect example of that, because they went hard with European experience, with proven head coaches. Proven is debatable, I guess, at this point. But, they did what the doubters right now are wanting, And look what they just did. They hired the assistant at Philadelphia Union, right? Which is like such a similar hire to what we are. And I have such a good feeling about their changeover with their GM and that coach, Noonan, of course. So St. Louisan, right? Did I get that right?
Yep.
I'm so bad with names. So, yeah, like so cool that I think they'll turn it around with a model similar to our little old expansion team over here. So I do think it'll work out for them, and it does feel like a smart move when you frame it in that way. But Matt, I love those stats you just listed, because it is something that Bradley said in there that a head coach in MLS is a really difficult role to fill. And I think it's because of those things, you see coaches come and go so much, but then you look at the parity in the league, like, are we really firing the right person all these times? And should we be firing these people? Is it really their fault when, the margins are so freaking tight in this league? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, oftentimes it's interesting to see where the buck stops in some of these moves. Does it stop with the head coach? Does it stop with the GM or sporting director? I think the head coach bears a lot of the brunt if they're not successful relatively quickly. I'll continue to carry the torch for the next year plus until we start, and hopefully on from there that this kind of experience is necessary. And I've said it all along that we need somebody at the top who knows the league. And they mentioned it today as one of Lutz's reasons why Bradley was so important, and he was their number one choice, is he knows the league, he knows the stadiums, he knows the teams, he knows the players. They talked extensively about both of their networks, both domestically and internationally. don't forget Lutz has experience here as a player, so it's not like he's completely foreign to MLS before he came here. There's a lot of knowledge about what's going on in this country with soccer that both of these guys are bringing. And I think we would have done a detriment to ourselves had we gone with even an inexperienced person that Lutz knew from Germany or from abroad. I think they made clearly the right choice there.
Yeah, it still always blows my mind when you have a foreign coach coming into MLS who isn't familiar with all of the just incredibly stupid roster rules they have here. And I know I complain about it all the time, but it isn't a situation of, where transfer window's opening, I need to buy these players. No, you can't. You're restricted with a few different things, and if you try to get creative and bend the rules, then you end up like Inter Miami, who just had to pay Monterrey to take Pizarro off of their hands. So, this MLS would not be the league I'd want to come into with no experience or familiarity, because it's just a bizarre league and from a roster standpoint, at least.
Absolutely.
And to follow up also about, Matt, some of those negative comments on some of the people out there, just they better get used to it, because this is the type of team that St. Louis is going to have. We're not a New York City. We're not Atlanta. We're not Miami or LA. We're going to be a Sporting KC, more blue collar, hardworking club that's not going to be going out and spending $15 million a year on an Italian national team player. That's just not. I don't think that's what CKB is going to be spending her money on.
It's the St. Louis way, right?
Yeah, St. Louis way.
Yeah, and I think there will be people disappointed once we know the roster for 2023, that there will be a lack of like a big star. I think there will be people disappointed, but yeah, that's the way this team is gonna be built, and I'm sure this group has been thinking about everything, and Lutz prepare very well for this moment, getting the first head coach hire, and I'm sure they will put together a good roster that will be competitive. It may not have big names at the beginning, but it will have players that will become bigger names in the league at some point.
And isn't that honestly one of the things we loved about St. Louis FC on a smaller level, that you had guys who were ours. They might not have been known elsewhere until they succeeded here, or they were known slightly elsewhere and then they came here and they were just beloved, but they weren't larger than life people. They gelled well, they played cohesively, but they were personable people. And I'm not saying we'll have everybody be personable, but I think that's the kind of thing that seems to be carrying forward in the comments right here, where the blue collar work effort, we're not bringing in $15 million strikers. We're building a club that fits the system, even though we've identified that the best player is available. So the single best player who's available might not be coming here if they don't fit into our system correctly. So sorry guys, we're not going to sign Messi.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think St. Louis fans, especially at first, I think they're going to really support that in a lot of ways. I have faith that I think it's going to go just fine in that regard. You look at a lot of, under Tony La Russa, we could bring in a no-name pitcher and the guy could become a hero for a couple of seasons. You know what I mean? Like Alan Craig, that whole story. Like there's so many players you can think of that were just brought from nowhere that became massive successes and fan favorites. St. Louis FC, you could even come up with a few names for sure equally in that way. You look at the Blues, winning the Stanley Cup with a guy that was on a minor league roster, goalkeeper, a season before, or maybe the season up. I don't even remember. I think St. Louis fans, it'll speak to them that this sort of thing of bringing in these unknown guys that become fan favorites, that become some of our hardest workers, is something we can relate to with St. Louis FC. Always the guys that are running the hardest end up becoming our favorites. The guys that collapse at the end of the game because they got nothing else in them. You know, even if we lose, we're like clapping and cheering for those guys at the end of the game. And you look at what Sporting Kansas City is able to do to sell out every single home game since their beginning. Like, I think we might get frustrated that fans aren't hipster enough more than we are going to get those European hipster guys that are pissed that we didn't sign Insigne. So, you know, I have faith in our fans, and I'm looking forward to especially that because I think it's going to get crazy on game day.
I think it'll be fun as you know, us as a group getting to help build that kind of hype, honestly, because we'll be going deep into some of these players and trying to flush out who they are and why we think we signed them and what we think they have to offer. Whereas having a big name come in, you might have seen highlights and people are just aware and know, they think they know. But honestly, a lot of the players, it sounds like we're going to be looking towards signing being relatively unknown or not having the most the biggest spotlight put on them. Those are going to be the most fun to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, is that it?
I was just going to ask you. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Stuart. You go first.
I was going to ask you guys a question. If there was one St. Louis FC player that you think would fit the city mold, who you'd want to bring over, who would it be?
Do they have to be like age appropriate? They'd have to, or how they were when they were with St. Louis FC?
How they were with St. Louis FC.
Manuel Cavilla.
Yeah, he's perfect. We need a mobile, physical center back for this system, and he's it. Yeah, that's really good.
Mine would be Russell Cicerone.
Yeah.
Good one.
That is really good, too. What do you think, Stuart?
Would it be cheating to say Jackmar?
Oh, so that's
had
where
that
you
one
were
locked
going.
and loaded.
He counts. He's playing the right side center back role, so like clearly he has the speed to keep up with, to cover a fullback in 1v1. Like, I think that's perfect. Mine would be Lewis Hilton. I think he'd be a good midfielder. So that'd be fun. Good question. I think the pivot here is I think we'll move away from Bradley Carnell's hiring and announcement. But one amazing thing to lastly kind of close with is that the app was used for this announcement when they were teasing that there was a big announcement and a special guest coming the next day. We got this banner notification on our phones that I'd never gotten, and it had that St. Louis City SC emblem on it. And I clicked on it, and it was a video. It pulled up the video, and it was, we didn't know it at the time, but all we saw were a couple of black and white Yeezys stepping off of a private jet with some cool music, some hype music, and you see some luggage, and you don't see who it is. And it was a really cool way to hype it. I thought that was really nice, and I just want to kind of, we've all been very happy with the app, and I think it looks like there's going to be a lot of content coming through the app this week, and so I definitely look forward to that. Any comments on the app or before we want to move on to other MLS stuff?
It reminded me of it reminded me of a movie scene where you see like some event happens and you get a montage of a bunch of different people becoming aware, knowing of something in different ways. CBEC had a post where there was like somebody saw it on their watch and they saw the notification on their watch. Somebody like I was already scrolling my phone and I saw the little thing pop up at the top, and so I immediately clicked on it. Some people just like picked up their phone and saw it on their lock screen. I mean, the way that app works, there's so many different ways to become aware of a push notification, and so with that being the first way they use it was pretty cool. Yeah, they saved it for that, right? It seemed like because they could have done this a long time ago. That's when you knew it was going to be the head coach. I feel like like before even like so something's happened. Like even if you hadn't gone straight to the video, like the hype that got was it's not going to be the City 2 coach. That was this is big. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I was worried a little bit that it was going to be the City 2 coach. I was going to be so disappointed, but the timing felt right. Let's talk about the MLS draft because it really, really affects St. Louis. And
Generation Adidas was announced, or it wasn't announced. It's not official yet, but it's being teased that Kip Keller, Patrick Schulte, and Isaiah Parker are all going to be announced as Generation Adidas signings. And these are guys that are lower classmen that will be made eligible for the draft early. They're not upperclassmen. And there are all kinds of incentives as far as like minimum salary for a few years, I think 3, and a lot of roster rules, of course, that we won't go into today, that Matt can maybe fill us in on the next episode. But the other big one is that, you know, they're not going to be able to be claimed as homegrowns, and so we were kind of holding out hope that we might see these players. And to me, this was the most heartbreaking news of 2022, I suppose, so far. I guess it's not hard. Stuart, I want to hear what your thoughts were on this one, because you're big on these players and wanting them to stay in our city.
Yeah, I mean, it's really bittersweet. I mean, watching, we saw, you know, Patrick Schulte, of course, in that iconic open cut game against Des Moines with St. Louis FC, and he was, you know, on the STLFC academy teams for years. Kip Keller was captain of the STLFC U19s his last year, and you know, I saw how he bonded kind of with Sam Fink when they were both on the senior team together. Sam, of course, being a great mentor. You know, you always want these guys to do well, and especially with it being so close to, you know, the MLS team kicking off. This is the last year of having that, hopefully, you know, bittersweet type feeling. But I'm always going to cheer for these guys and hope they represent St. Louis well, just hopefully not against St. Louis City. But there is such a long tradition of Gallagher guys in the MLS draft going in the first round. I was looking at it the other day. Of course, Taylor Twellman was second overall. I think Will Bruin was 4th. There hasn't been a first overall pick from Gallagher yet. So
Mayer was second overall.
Yeah, Mayer's second. Robbie Robinson was number 1 that year.
Yep.
So if Kip does go first, that would be a first for Gallagher, but there have been 2 or 3 guys who have gone second overall before, and a few other guys who have gone top 10. So it says a lot for the ongoing excellence of, you know, Scott Gallagher and what they've done as a club, and also how, you know, Coach Kalish has kind of formed these guys into a more finished product.
Yeah. Very much so. Santiago, what did you think about all of those announcements?
Well, it's very exciting to see St. Louis players being talked about being in the top 10 and signing Generation Adidas contracts. But yeah, at the same time, it's bittersweet that another team will get them. My hope is that CDSC will make a move at some point and get one of these players, either Jack Mayer or Kip Keller or Patrick. But I think they will make the effort to bring one of these younger guys from St. Louis that they know has a future. So hopefully we'll see a move like that next year.
Yeah, next year, speaking of which, Jack Lynn and Jansen Miller are probably going to be the 2 big St. Louis guys who will be hitting the draft. So we'll see what happens with them. I mean, both those guys have the potential to be Generation Adidas players themselves. So,
are they going to be seniors next year?
No, so they'd have to be Generation Adidas. I think both of them would be juniors. And for whatever reason, MLS defines underclassmen as anything under senior. It isn't junior and senior. It's just seniors are upperclassmen, which I've never quite understood why, but I'm sure there's some sort of MLS distinction with NCAA that they partner with or agree on.
But so one of the things on that is a lot of people who are hearing Generation Adidas might be seeing like, all right, what makes these guys special? What does that designation mean? And so Generation Adidas is the the kind of partnership between MLS and Adidas, where they basically offer a guaranteed contract to an underclassman. So, Stu, to your point, like a junior or below, who hasn't completed their collegiate experience. They're not done with college necessarily. They could go back, but MLS as a league has said, you are good enough. We're going to award you a guaranteed contract with the league. So that's why you see the Generation Adidas guys always picked first, second, third, fourth in the top 10 usually in the draft, because they have guaranteed contracts already. It just depends on which team's going to pick them up. It's not like you declare for the draft and you have to wait it out to see if you're picked. These guys are already signed with the league. And part of it is they do get an educational stipend too. So they are compensated education-wise for leaving school early. So I thought that was really cool, knowing that Keller and Parker and Schulte and these guys are going to have that opportunity to continue their education based on this contract.
Yeah, and Keller maybe not. Like, I could see if Keller landed in the right place. Like, I think Charlotte might be his best bet. Rebel New York is also someone who has been said that someone could land at. And anyway, he might not be able to be gotten next year, but with what we saw with the expansion draft, with what we saw with the movement of Gam and Tam for international slots in the offseason, if we decided we weren't going to spend that money on international slots and we decided we wanted to bring in someone like Schulte or one of our former, any St. Louis in the league that we want to bring in, if they are a good match, it's possible. It's always possible. And so I'm going to be hoping for hope that we get one of them back, perhaps. But Jansen Miller.
My homework that I want to see, though, is I haven't been able to find an example of a Generation Adidas player being traded while on their Generation Adidas contract.
Oh, well, but I mean, Gam fixes everything, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not saying it can't happen, because I think I told you guys the other day that if it's in the roster rules, it can be traded.
Yeah.
Like, we talked about guys who had their homegrown rights traded. There was that player who had his homegrown rights traded from Real Salt Lake to, what was it, LAFC, and then over to Charlotte.
Cameron Duke.
Yeah. So, but I mean, you could trade homegrown rights. That seems a little bit absurd, but I don't doubt that you can. I just haven't found an example of anybody trading a Generation Adidas player who's still on their Generation Adidas contract, which is up to 3 years.
Was J.J. Williams, or was he just let go a couple of years ago? Because he was Generation Adidas in 2019.
See, if you're out of contract or let go or not, it depends, because Generation Adidas contracts aren't guaranteed 3 years. It just depends. They're up to 3 years.
Well, I do know. I don't know if it expired. Yeah. I don't know if it expired or not, but he was loaned to the Legion, Birmingham Legion, for the first time. And then I think it was a full contract this last time he went to them instead of a loan. And so I don't know if it expired or if – no, it couldn't have. So maybe they signed him and MLS was no longer – the Generation Adidas contract was no longer valid because it was in the USL or what. I don't know. Seems like they would want to work out a loan so that Birmingham didn't have to pay him, but he was still being paid by MLS proper.
That's one of those weird things of, if you get, and I guess it's for you as a player to decide, if you're offered a Generation Adidas contract for 1 year, is it worth it? If you're offered a Generation Adidas contract for 3 years, it probably changes the game a little bit.
Yeah.
A little into the weeds there maybe, but that's the kind of thing we do. But yeah, I think the other sad thing that we've touched on before too is that, we feel like we should be able to get our St. Louis players, and it almost feels like, the fact that we're not able to claim them seemingly as homegrowns, or I don't know if we're going to be able to claim any of the Scott Gallagher guys as homegrowns like some other teams have been able to do out of college. If we can't do that for a few more years, that's really unfortunate. And that's another part of this GA thing, this Generation Adidas thing, that is sad for me, that it would have been really nice if we could have I was hoping to buck the system and use those MLS rules to our advantage, the ones that I absolutely hate. I know I've run on and on and on about that, but just one more time, I wish we could have claimed Schulte and gotten him on our team this year and just held on to him for next year.
Yeah. Is homegrown territories still a thing, or did that go away?
It was still a thing as of last year. The roster rules for the upcoming season should come out probably in about a month or so, I would say. So the season starts end of February. Roster rules usually come out a little bit before that. So that's the thing that I is long-standing, is that there's an assumption that they're phasing out homegrown territories.
I feel like I'm like a crazy MLS libertarian. Every time those rules come out, I'm like, please let there be less rules. Please.
Then they add 2 or 3 more just for the heck of it.
Yeah, I should start MLS Libertarian like a subreddit and just get really crazy.
It's like, okay, you can sign younger players and they won't hit your salary cap, but only if you have a 3 DPs and the third one is a certain age.
Oh,
so they 1 step forward, 2 steps back.
They're taking away our soccer rights.
My salaries.
I should be able to pay whoever I want to pay. Okay. Santiago, how's your southern accent? Mine's not too good, apparently.
Oh, mine is bad too.
It's always
Don't count
fun.
on me for that.
Yeah, it's always fun hearing foreigners do a southern accent. It happens from time to time. Any other thoughts? The other person that we left out, Simon Betcher, is able to be drafted this year, and he's went to SLU. And who were you talking about the other day? Muni, right? Stuart, you were bringing up Mooney. Kyle Mooney?
Daniel Mooney.
Daniel Mooney.
Yeah, and he'll I think he'll also be hitting the draft next year, so he's one to be checking out. I completely forgot about Daniel for a second. My apologies to him. He's not going to hear this, but I like you, Daniel.
I don't know. We've got one live viewer right now. It could be him.
Yeah. Maybe.
Hey, if you guys hear this on a podcast, whenever we go online, we'll warn you. We'll give you more warning because I think we've worked out all the bugs. It seems to be going well. And if you want to join us in the chat and ask questions, make comments, that would be really cool if anyone wanted to do that. If you are like us and like 2 of us, you put your kids to bed and start podcasting immediately. So if 8:30 is not too late for you, join us.
Yeah.
Otherwise, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, it looks like Stewart found that example of a player being traded while on Generation Adidas contract. So
Frankie Amaya, FC Cincinnati to Red Bulls?
Yep.
So what happened? What does it say?
He was traded for $950,000 in GAM and an additional $125,000 of allocation money based on incentives. And that was last spring.
Yeah.
See, so GAM does solve everyone's problems.
Yeah, and he was a freshman at UCLA who signed a Generation Adidas contract.
Another thing I learned today is that TAM expires. You have to use it within, I think, 3 years, or is it 2?
Yeah.
But GAM is forever. Never does.
Yeah, and they're trying to phase out TAM too. So they've increased the amount of GAM that teams get each year, but they've been decreasing TAM. And GAM is a lot more flexible. Like you have to, people call certain players like TAM level players because they're making like almost enough to cross the DP threshold, but they're bought down with TAM to get below it.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of coaches, we shouldn't dig into this, but it seems like a lot of coaches and GMs are really interested in the possibility of stop telling us who we can pay $1 million, millions and millions of dollars to, and just give us a number and we'll split it up however we want. And I really want that to happen because I think a team like St. Louis would really benefit from that kind of thing.
And that's one of those nuances. Like, yeah, they're moving a step forward, but like the needle's being pushed, like moved ever so slightly. Like it's still the same like mechanisms and different types of like pots of fake money, but they're like making one pot useful everywhere and growing it, and then the other pot that's only useful in this one little part, and they're shrinking it.
Yeah. Nothing will go away in 1 year, but maybe that pushing out of TAM is part of that process. I guess that's what I was thinking. Cool. I'm going to call it, though. I think it's getting a little late. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Santiago, again, thanks for joining us tonight. I'm glad we were able to finally make it possible for you. And,
thanks for having me.
Stuart, Matt, thank you to you, both of you as well. We'll have to talk about it. I don't know if we'll go next week since we skipped an extra week, or if we'll come back in 2 weeks. I guess we'll just see what the news brings us and see what we can do. So thanks for listening, everyone. We'll be hitting you up again soon.
See ya.
See ya.